everybody.
Hi, Zach.
Can y'all see and hear me okay?
You're in a car.
I'm in the car. I am parked. So I'm not driving. No hands. Look, no hands.
I'm driving, so that's why I'm not visible. I decided not to show people my driving skills here.
Sounds good. I am coming back to Nashville, and so pulled over in a McDonald's parking lot on their Wi-Fi. So if it stops working, let me know, and I can try to connect to my phone.
That's one of the things I love about McDonald's, that they do give you free Wi-Fi.
Well, they've got it. They've got the inside shut down too. So I think hopefully it's nobody else is on.
Hi.
I've always used a trick driving around.
Took me a minute to find you on the computer.
All good.
Hey, Beth, I met a friend of yours not too long ago. His name is Richard Landis.
Yes.
He lives next door to my good friends and clients over here in East Nashville. So I see him about once a week. He's a really great guy.
He's a sweetheart. Love Richard. Good, great producer.
Well, he says wonderful things about you as a person and a performer as well. So.
I owe him a lot of money then.
I'll let him know you're sending some when I see him.
This is so great. Can we just keep this going with the Zooms?
It is. It's been fascinating to see how everybody gets along with it. It's a, I think it works out really well, and it's a, I don't know. It's been interesting.
It's so wonderful because sometimes it's hard to get to the office. It's been great for meetings. Just wonderful.
Yeah, I like having, and you can record it for the classes too.
That was some voice. Who was that?
It was Jan.
Hi, Jan.
I'm out here in driving land, so I didn't do my video option. So y'all couldn't see how bad of a driver I am. And I'll have to mute it because I do use a few choice words.
Well, I'm in gardening mode, so.
Hey guys.
Well, we can go ahead. We can go ahead and dive in. And if y'all are not talking, if you don't mind muting yourself, otherwise I can do it. But I'm in a parking lot as well. I'm heading back to Nashville. It'll be down, especially briefly, but I'm heading back. So. If somebody flagged me if for some reason the internet stops working on my end. But so we're talking about, how to do market reviews and how to do kind of use some data to support a case for whatever you may be trying to argue with clients, either on an actual basis or just give them some market news and whatnot. So so there are kind of three different tools. I know that Trendgraphix was one that was in the comments, and there's basically three different tools that I will use for this, and they're each good in their own way. But so I'm going to give you a quick overview of those three, and then show you how to kind of the basics of how they work. At the end of the day, the best way to learn something is to play with it, and you're not going to break it. And so I don't want to do like a super focused in the weeds step-by-step tutorial on all these things, because I think your time is probably better spent just learning what the differences are. But and obviously if you have any questions, you can always let me know afterwards. But the three main tools that I will use is one is Trendgraphix. That's a company that is used that basically takes data from real tracks and lets you analyze it. So if you try to look at real tracks, for instance, and somebody said, hey, what's the best time to sell, or is there something, are there any trends that are happening in terms of when more places come on the market? There's really not an effective way to do a search on RealTrax for that. So in RealTrax, you can do kind of like look at the last 6 months or the last year or whatever and get a snapshot of all the closings over that time. But if you wanted to see kind of a month by month trend to see are closings picking up, are closings falling down, are new listings picking up, et cetera, are prices increasing, are prices decreasing, there's not a very effective way to do that. And so Trendgraphix is a tool that does just what its name is, which is it's graphs, trends. So kind of a thoughtful name, Trendgraphix. RealTrax also just came out with a tool or adopted a tool, I think it's another independent company, but called InfoSparks. And it's actually very similar to Trendgraphix. And it has a couple of things that I like just a tad better. So, and it's accessible right through RealTrax, which is great. The third tool is one that if you've been through Ninja, you've probably heard of the Focus First system. And that is a way to take a bunch of data, a bunch of numbers, and basically put it in pictures, which I'm a little bit more of a visual learner. And when I have something that I can show, as opposed to just kind of dump a mountain of data on somebody and then hope they figure it out, then then to me that's easier, and I think a lot of people that's easier as well. So that's something that is a first tool that you pay for, but I've kind of mirrored that a little bit and have put together a kind of an Excel version, or it's actually on Google Sheets, which is sort of the online version of Excel that Google has, and you can take that. It doesn't look at trends, but it does look at a snapshot, just like you would in RealTrax. But instead of getting a CMA report with a bunch of numbers, it gives you a visual representation of that, and in my opinion, is much easier to use. A couple people in this group have used that before. I know Rebecca's used that, and Jan, you may have used it as well. So all that being said, that's what we'll go over. So any questions on that so far before I dive in and kind of give you a little overview of each of these and what works and why they work and how to use them and how to log in? All right, so I'm going to share the screen.
Can I ask one quick question? What did you say it's called through RealTrax?
So the RealTrax tool is called InfoSparks, INFOSPARKS. And I'll show you how to get there. It's actually not titled InfoSparks when you're looking for it on RealTrax. It's just titled Market Stats, but that will get you to, I guess maybe the company they hire is called InfoSparks. And interestingly enough, you can actually access that through RealTrax, which is probably the easiest way to do it. Or if you use Showing Time, the showing service, and you're on their website, you can access it through there too. But it's the same data, it's the same, the same thing. So, so let me jump into Trendgraphix. So Trendgraphix is a little tricky in terms of how you log in. There's not really a link, there's not a password, but there's two ways to log in. The main way that works on most browsers, and for some reason it doesn't work all the time, but you go to Trendgraphix, and that's with an X. So, and let me just show you here. Share my screen. Can you all see my screen here? All right. So if you go to Trendgraphix with an X, that's what it's spelled. If you go to trendgraphix.villagetn.com, that should log you in. Sometimes though, I don't know why, but it doesn't. So if that doesn't work, I've got a little shortcut that also works, and it's kind of, I guess it's kind of vain, but it's easy for me to remember. So it's just zachgoodyear.net. And so if you go to zachgoodyear.net, it will take you to the right spot. Maybe that's harder to remember, but the key is if you try to bookmark this, it will forward it to this link. And this link, unfortunately, will not work if you go back to it on a bookmark. So if you bookmark it, just change that bookmark to Goodyear.net. And y'all are all on mute, so if for some reason any of this doesn't make sense, stop me. But
Zach, there's one other there's one other way as well. There's still the link in the VRES market under resources.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So under resources, if you go to VRS Market, you can access it there too. So when most people look at this for the first time, they think, oh my God, I need a tutorial. I have no idea how to use this. But I'm going to break it down for you. And if you know how to use RealTrax, then I promise you'll know how to use this. So the first thing it does, it basically opens up, which you can see on my screen, it opens up the snapshot of the entire Middle Tennessee market over the last 14 or so months. And it shows you three things. It shows you what's for sale, which are the light green lines. It shows you what's sold that month. And then it shows you the pendings. So for instance, we could look at this and say, all right, in March of 2020, on RealTrax, there were 12,445 active listings on the market that month. If you think of it as a snapshot at the end of the month, this system basically takes a snapshot of RealTrax at the last day of the month, the last day of March, and says, all right, the last day of March, there were 12,445 active listings. And for March, there were 4,600 and change, or 4,494 closings. And then there were 4,643 pendings, right? So if you put all of this data on a spreadsheet for somebody to see, it would look a little bit like what's about to come, hopefully. Come on, baby. It would be overwhelming, is my opinion, or is my point. Just a ton of numbers, and really hard to see, and really hard to explain and understand what it is. So, so I guess the question is, like, having data and being able to show data really doesn't do that much for you just in and of itself, right? So the whole point of having data is to help you tell a story, right? So the key is to try to understand what question are you trying to answer, and what story are you looking to tell with that question, and then you can use data to help show why that story is accurate, so that you have some backup, right? You can show up to a listing appointment or to a buyer by yourself, or you can bring a mountain of the market behind you and help show, proof. Not that people don't believe you, but people usually feel more comfortable when their advice is being backed up by data. And so that's the reason that you would use these tools. So for instance, let's say that we were looking at a house in Davidson County. Let's use the main village zip code, the main office, 37212. And we want to say, you know what? I've got a house that is, probably in the $800,000 to $1 million range, somewhere in there. And maybe you're about to put it on the market, or maybe it's just you want to give a market update to a seller. If you go and say, hey, what's the market?
We're losing you a little bit, Zach.
You can pull up a certain track. Let's just do that for a minute.
Is anyone else having his audio breakout? Okay. We can't hear you, Zach. So if you might be frozen. You might just have I can text him as well.
Stop my video. Is that better?
Let's see here. Could you give us a couple of testing 1-2s for your audio? That'd be a good talk. 10-4 broker 2-5. Anybody want to handle on? Put your ears on.
Y'all are
Hold, please. Come on back, Zach Tracker. Where are you there?
Maybe he's going to re-log in.
I think so. Hi, Beth Hooker.
Hi, Ted.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Your house looks beautiful.
Oh, my house looks like a mess.
That's what actually I meant to say.
Here, I'll turn it this direction. It looks better.
Oh, look at that house, everyone. When you want a fireplace like that, oh.
I Sculpted.
Your home is lovely, and you
Thank
should. It's even better when she cooks in it. It looks amazing over there.
All right, is this any better?
Oh yeah, that's ship shape. We can only hear about every third word now. Before it was every fourth. Are you there, Zach?
Is this any
Come
better?
on.
Can you all hear me now?
We
Not
seem
with your
to hear
hand
you
in your
now.
mouth.
All
Oh,
right,
There you go.
I'm gonna
Get
stop
rid
my
of it.
video, and but I think I can still share my screen. So can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. I just switched over to my McDonald's failed me. McDonald's Wi-Fi failed me here in the parking lot.
The old Mick Cafe. What do you
switched
want for
over
99 cents?
to my phone. We'll see if Verizon can make it happen here.
Mick Wi-Fi.
So let me see if I can share my screen again. And
Where are you, Zach?
I'm in Laurel, Mississippi.
Hey, yo. Well, that explains everything.
Heading back up. So, all right, can you see my screen?
We can. Welcome to Real Tracks, everybody.
Welcome to Real Tracks. All right, so we were talking, where it broke off, I think, was saying, if you're trying to do let's say we're looking at a house, and maybe this is a past client that you just want to give an annual market report up to, or maybe this is, you just want to, check in with your buddies and let them know how the market's doing. You could do a search and say, hey, what about the closings over the last, I don't know, year in 37212, between, where's the price? This price between, 800,000 and, $1 million, right? So you pull that up and you'll get a snapshot of whatever those properties are. But ultimately it just gives you a bunch of stuff, and you could spend, you probably spend, I don't know, a little while interpreting all that data. What's nice while that's loading, what's nice about RealTracks, about Trendgraphix rather, is you do the exact same thing. You can go down here to zip code, basically click 37212, and then you can say, price range from 800,000 to, almost $1 million, and you'll look for about the last year. And if you click show chart, it'll change that, and it'll take all of this data here, these 43 properties that are, active, pending, and closed, and it'll put them in a picture for you. Now, this is a pretty narrow search, right? So the danger when you're trying to look at trends, if you look at something super, super focused, it's hard to see trends in that. So what we see here is that, in April of last year, there were 16 places on the market. In April of this year, there are only 10 places on the market. So if you're trying to sell your house within that range, is that good or bad right now in terms of your competition? It's good, right? You got less competition. You go to the dance, and you got 16 people trying to compete to dance with Teddy here. Now you only got 10 people. So if you're one of the 10, you got more chances, right, Teddy? So then you so that's just a little info there. But what I'm going to do is let's just look at kind of a broader picture of a 37212. Let's expand this a little bit. And maybe let's say between, $500,000 and $1 million, just to see if that shows a little bit broader data. Or maybe you could even say, hey, I'm looking at houses between this price range all across Davidson County, right? But this is a little bit more of a trend, right? So we went from $500,000 to $1 million. Again, giving kind of a market snapshot of the neighborhood, depending on where you are. And what's nice about doing it in a broader range, you can take this one report and basically send it out to anybody that you've ever closed in that particular zip code. But what do you see, aside from this little spike here, what do you see in terms of the available choices, the inventory? Is it going up or down? Going down, right? So fewer choices, right? So aside from that little spike of inventory, which interestingly, that spike of inventory also created a spike of pendings and then a big spike of closings right here, right? So I'm not sure what that was. You could dig into RealTrax and find exactly what that was. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you needed to kind of understand that to help your story, you could do that. So how's the market doing? Well, inventory is going down. Over the last year, inventory has gone down consistently pretty much every single month in 37212. So that's a sound bite, but then you can say, yeah, look, see this? That market, that inventory is going down. Now, interestingly, because there's less inventory, closings have also gone down, right? So in April and May, there were 19, 10, 19, 27 closings. In April, May, or I guess March, April this year, there were only 8, and 5 closings. So there are fewer closings. So if you just looked at the closings, you'd say, oh man, the market is not doing well. Like closings are way down. But closings are either way down because there are no buyers out there buying them, or there's no choices for the buyers to buy, right? Makes sense? You go to the store to buy shoes and they got nothing in your size, then you're not coming out with any shoes. That doesn't mean you don't want shoes. You just can't buy any because they don't have any. So, so that's to me, that's a really helpful point when, you know, a headline might say closings down 30%. Ooh, scary. Well, try to understand why. I always ask the question of why. So what about prices? So you can look at pricing in a couple ways. You look at prices as all these tabs up here show you different prices. So you can look at average price per square foot. Now, price per square foot, in my opinion, gets way overblown. Buyers and sellers, the consumer, the public loves to use price per square foot as a trigger that they know a whole lot. And websites
I say that's like buying a car by the pound.
Buying a car by the pound, right? Totally.
That's what I say.
That's a great way to look at it, right?
What you hauling on your trucker? What's your weight?
So buy that car by the pound, and it's probably not a great way to buy a car. So ultimately, if you've got a 2,000 square foot house that has no backyard and no outdoor space, and then you've got another 2,000 square foot house right next to it that has a pool, a beautiful, $100,000 worth of landscaping and fountains and fenced-in yard and whatever, those are definitely not going to be the same price per foot. That's obvious, right? So why do we care about price per square foot so much? That being said, no house is for the most part, no house is exactly the same as one other house. So it helps us look at apples and oranges and kind of create a general comparison. It works well enough if you're looking at broad-based data. So you can say, all right, are there any trends here? We bounced between, at a low point, $239 a square foot. This is for the closings, all the way up to $320 a square foot. Well, this to me is not that helpful. If you kind of blow your eyes a little bit, you might see the prices go down a teeny bit, but then right here, when inventory was at its lowest, they're actually going up. So again, the bigger your data set, the less restrictive you make this, the more chance you'll be able to see actual trends. But to me, if I'm trying to help a client understand whether or not now is a good time to put their house in the market, if I look at this first tab, it's going to say, you know what? There are fewer closings, but there's also way less inventory. So my opinion is now is definitely a good time to put it in the market because you're in the spring, you've got less competition. What about prices? Well, prices have gone up and down, but generally speaking, they've stayed steady. I'm going to skip this tab for a second, and I'm going to go over to this one. So this is looking at price point. This is looking at average price. So this first one that we're just on is looking at price per square foot. This is just looking at average price, right? And so this is a little bit tricky because it's got two things here. So what I like to do is I actually like to go down and click median price sold, right? So that's the median price, kind of the middle of the market of what is sold in 37212 that month. So 700,000, some more expensive stuff is sold. Again, in winter of last year, there was some expensive stuff sold, but over the last few months, there's been a steady trend upwards, right? So either that means prices are increasing, or in the $500 to $1 million range that we're looking at, that means the more expensive homes within that range are the ones that are actually closing, and the less expensive ones maybe are in bad shape or overpriced and they aren't closing, right? And again, you can kind of glance at this, and then if you want to go in and kind of cherry pick some things in RealTrax and see what supports your argument and helps you understand your argument, then great. So the last two tabs on this are the days on the market, which is pretty obvious, just looks at the days on the market. Aside from a few spikes, the average days on market is, you know, I would say consistently going down, right? A few spikes here, and maybe those are some new construction things that sat on the market on the MLS for a long time, but overall days on market is, you know, has been decreasing a little bit. In the beginning of this year, it jumped up. That's fairly common for the winter time. If you look at February and March of, you know, January, I bet was big too over here. We don't show that. Those were longer. And so, you know, January and February and March, if you look at February and March, 97 to 68 days on the market. February and March here were 100 and 140. So things are actually sitting on the market a shorter amount of time. Again, probably not a bad idea to sell your house. Maybe the pricing is relatively stable, but the risk of sitting on the market too long, which ultimately affects a lot of things, it affects pricing, it affects your ability to get a good buyer if they think it's, you know, something's wrong with it, whatever. Ultimately, that will help you make an argument that you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is probably a good time to sell your house. So days on market, the one tricky part about days on market is that it can be affected if somebody, you know, puts a house on the market for 45 days or 90 days, and then it pulls off the market, and maybe it switches real estate agents, or maybe it doesn't switch agents, and then it goes back in the market, right? So that can ultimately can affect that. So this months of inventory tab right here at the end, I don't know why these aren't next to each other. They would make more sense that way in my opinion, but they're not. Gives you a sense of how much inventory is out there. Now we know from being over here that inventory, right? The actual inventory, the number of homes on the market has been going down pretty steadily. If you remember those light green lines, whenever they pull up, that were going down pretty steadily every month, right? So fewer choices on the market, but there's also fewer closings. So what the months of inventory does is it takes those light green lines and basically puts them in a ratio in comparison to the number of closings. Because if you had 10 closings in March of last year and 20 houses that were on the market, then half of the houses that were on the market sold. Does that make sense? In 1 month, right? So that means it would statistically, if you kept that pace up and sold 10 houses the next month, there's a 2-month supply of homes on the market. So if nothing new came on the market in 2 months, statistically, everything should be off the market and there'd be nothing left for sale. Now, obviously we know that never really happens because there's always people that are putting their homes back in the market. There's always that cycle, right? That flow of listings that come back on. So what you don't want to do as a listing is get trapped in that kind of cycle and never sell, because it's like, man, we didn't sell that 10, you know, in the 10 that month, but maybe we can sell in the 10 this month. Well, sorry, buddy, there's 10 more new ones that are coming on. And if you're still not in a good price condition or location, then you're probably not going to make it into that set. So we got to adjust. We got to either make your house prettier, change your location, which we can't really do, or reduce the price. Those are the 3 options. So what months of a big spike of inventory, but for the most part, it's sat between kind of, you know, 2 and 6 months. And you can look at that and say, you know, if you wanted to say down here, the, you know, year to date for the first 6 months, it's been about 4.5 months of inventory. So this is a more, in my opinion, a little bit more of a helpful way when somebody says, well, how long do you think it's going to take to sell my house? Well, I can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take. That's you know, that's part of what you know, we don't know, because I don't know the exact buyer and the exact time it's going to come. But if we get your price, condition, and location correct, then on average, it's taken about 4.5 months for most houses to sell.
And if you don't want to look at my fancy chart, the answer is as long as you want it to.
That's a great way to do it, right? If somebody says, well, I want to price my house, you know, 10% over where you suggest. Will it sell? Yeah, it'll probably sell. It might sell in 2024 or 2025, but the market's going to have to catch up to that, right? And if you've done this enough and made that mistake enough, then you usually know that it will usually sell. Whenever it does sell, it will probably sell for less than it could have sold because it's out of the market for too long, and then people wondered what was wrong with it, and you know, why it's not selling and nobody wants to be the, you know, the sucker.
I use the analogy of a grand opening or stale bread, right? Like, when is somebody going to be most attracted to the latest car? Like when it's on the point and they can't get it. Everybody wants the Corvette right now, right? It's a hot thing. People haven't seen it. It's limited. Once it's on the market, and in like bread, there are people who pay money for yesterday's bread. There's a reason there's a neon sign that says hot donuts. Like all these analogies, they seem to kind of get it a little bit more when I say that, is that because what I hear often is, we're not in a hurry to sell. I said, well, that's good. Well, look, why don't you call me when we're ready? Now that's sassy, but you can say, because it's going to sell for less than if we take too much time. So in real estate terms, in my opinion, I say at 14 days, if we don't have offers, we are priced improperly. Definitely at 21 days. That's the time at which it goes from fresh to starting to turn. At 30 days, your listing is wearing a green sweater, AKA it's getting moldy. I don't care. I can throw enough shrimp cocktail and wine and cheese at this thing to make people pay a price that's not in line with being in the market versus being on the market. So I'll just throw those little Bass Trend nuggets in there for you. Go on there, Zach Goodyear.
I love it. I love it. So again, just a quick synopsis of this. And again, the idea behind this is to be able to get a quick understanding of what this is, what this tool is. It's the same choices over here that you have in RealTrax. If you pick county, it's going to eliminate the zip code. Basically, this goes from big to small. So it starts out in county, then it goes down to city, then it goes down to neighborhood. I rarely use this just because people will name things differently on the MLS, or they'll misspell something, and so I don't want it to not capture something. And then it goes to zip code. I like using zip codes generally. Now you can do all residential properties to break this down, but again, the more narrow you have it, I usually don't break these things down into very small nuggets, just because it's sort of like looking at a pile of RealTrax numbers, right? It's kind of like looking at all this stuff and it's like, oh, we could run a CMA on this thing. Well, it doesn't really tell me much. If you can get a little bit of a broad-based trend, it'll help you kind of put you in the right direction to where the more narrowed actual data on the MLS, where you're really looking at comps, can guide you. Does that make sense? So a few other little tips on this, and then y'all got to promise me that you'll practice it and play with it. Any of these tabs up here will show you whatever data you have over here after you click show chart, but then you can change them right here and you can do little drop downs. If you want to see, if you're more of an engineering mind and you want to see the actual numbers as opposed to just the pictures, you can do that here, down here. Most people, this confuses the hell out of them, so pictures are usually easier. And then you can use these tools to save it, save the picture, or if you wanted to email it. I love emailing something or print it out. You can print it out and click a little pop-up window will pop up, and you can basically, it'll make a nice, pretty PDF that you could print out and put in your listing consultation, or in, oops, blocking my pop-ups. So it has a little pop-up. I don't know, it's not letting me unblock that for some reason. But if you set that up, then you'll have a nice little PDF. So I'm going to jump over to InfoSparks on RealTrax because it's actually a very similar tool, but it does have one benefit that I'm starting to like a lot, and one of those is that you can search by map. Right? Notice over here in Trendgraphix, you do zip code, but there's nothing to search by map. If you look at 37209, for instance, well, that's Sylvan Park. It's also like way down Charlotte Pike and part of kind of northwest Nashville above Charlotte. It's a big area, so you're capturing a lot more stuff that maybe you're not trying to look at, and it could skew the data.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
That select a neighborhood category there, is that using the subdivision that's in MLS?
It's using the subdivision in MLS. So it's great for like things that are newer, where there's probably like here 505 shows up. Like that's probably easy to do if you wanted to click all the high rises. But for instance, like, if we looked at 12 South, I don't even see that.
Yeah, Sylvan Park tends to be pretty accurate, but 12 South gets a little loose in the turns. So could we still use, does that section correlate to the subdivision in MLS? Was my question, sorry.
It does, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So, if you look at, I was trying to see where, Belmont. You know, you got Belmont, Belmont Hillsborough, Belmont Land. There's all Belmont Waverly, Belmont 12 South, Belmont Dash Hillsborough, Belmont Dash Vanderbilt. There's so many different things that people will call certain older in-town neighborhoods that it's really hard. So I try to stay away from that.
Well, and a lot of times people forget to change the subdivision when they do a listing, and it's going to pull from tax record. And a lot of times that tax record is not going to say Sylvan Park. It's going to say R.H. Boyd 12. And that was just from a previous thing. And so that may be key data that it would influence the comps you're using in MLS and like this Trendgraphix.
Yeah, totally. All right. So so RealTrax, again, it has the market stats. If you log into RealTrax, doesn't matter where you are, but right up here where it says reports, down here it says market stats. So you see that, you click on that, and it will open up in another tab, this little guy that says info sparks. Now, before I started playing with this and it confused the hell out of me. So my suggestion is, and I'm not going to show it now, but I'm going to show you where you get it, is if you look on the user manual and FAQ here, there is I think it's like a 5.5-minute video, and it gives an awesome, a really helpful, easy to understand overview. Where's the video? Well, it's taking a minute for me to load, but I think it's right here. There's a little video that pops up, and I watched that and it made great sense. But I'll give you a little bit of an overview. Let's kind of look at the same stuff, right? So let's say we're looking at all property types. Let's say we wanted to find an area. So so this defaults to, I think, entire MLS. So let's say 37212, right? So we're going to look at the same stuff. It's going to show, I mean, it's all the data is from RealTrax, right? So it shows that this looks over the last few years. So maybe we want to do it just the last 1 year. And this shows the median sales price, right? So down here, if I wanted to see the new listings, it shows, in a line graph, and you can change it to a bar graph if you wanted. Well, I think you'd have to do it monthly. I can't remember how you do it. I was trying to get it to look at these to look the same, but if you look at line, it will look the same. It's the same data as before. So remember that in everything was, the inventory was, and actually that's a new listing. So homes for sale, same thing. There was a little spike, if you remember, in November on Trendgraphix, right? Which we could pull that back up. It's the same stuff, but generally speaking, the inventory is going down. And I didn't break it down by price range, but you can do that. What's cool about this is if you wanted to pull up, you can do some side-by-side comparisons. So for instance, you might say, I want to look at, what, if somebody's thinking about like, all right, I have the opportunity to, their past clients calling in like, I don't know, I've got a 4-bedroom house, or I got a 3-bedroom house. I'm thinking about doing an addition, make it a 4-bedroom house. How are those selling? Well, you could look on RealTrax, but you could do a comparison. You could say in 37212, 3-bedroom houses, you could look at, the number of closings that happen. And you can also do 37212. And then you could do it, 4-bedroom or more. Did I click 3 bedrooms? Right? So you can do 4 bedrooms or more over there. And I think up here, you can actually, if you click that little button, you can lay them on top of each other. So, more, which one's the 4 bedrooms? The orange or that's 3 bedrooms down here, and that's 4 bedrooms. So generally speaking, 4 bedrooms sell better than 3 bedrooms. Does that make sense? More 4-bedroom houses in 37212 sell compared to 3 bedrooms. So it's like, yeah, man, I love the idea of you doing an addition and doing a 4-bedroom. But what they're asking is, am I overbuilding my house for the neighborhood? Am I doing too much? Well, how do 4-bedroom houses sell? Well, that's a great question. Let's click on sales price down here. 3-bedroom houses, for the most part, You know, they're selling in the, you know, 700 to, what does that say? 0.6 million is a little confusing, but that's 600,000, right? So they're selling in kind of the 600 to 700,000 range, whereas 4-bedroom houses, you had some big spikes right here, are generally selling closer to the 800 to a million range. So, you know, if you're spending, you know, 150 grand on your addition and you're adding a 4th bedroom and making your house nice, then that's probably a pretty good investment. Does that make sense? It's kind of a way that you can use this for a useful, to help tell the story. But otherwise, we're just probably kind of talking out of our rears. I feel like I am sometimes if I don't have some information to back it up. So, and again, the sky's the limit as to how you can use this stuff, but the key is play with it, and then the last or kind of the place that, once you understand how these things work, the place to start is going to be to start with a question, right? And maybe it's a question from a buyer or a seller that you're working with currently. Maybe you're trying to figure out if you should take this listing, right? So if you might say like, oh my gosh, y'all, I'm getting this $3 million listing. Well, that sounds exciting until you look at $3 million listings, and you could use that on RealTracs, but you might look at trends of $3 million listings versus $2 million listings, and you realize like a whole hell of a lot of $2 million listings sell in a certain neighborhood, but very few $3 million listings do. So you're going to just be strapped with a $3 million listing that you're going to have to pump thousands and thousands of dollars of marketing into, and maybe it's not going to sell. So what if you sold a $2 million listing instead? Yeah, it's less money and less commission dollars, but you only get paid if it sells. So y'all chime in real quick. How else would you use this? What questions would you have in terms of like what does this put in your head in terms of like what you could ask, what you could find out, what you could answer for somebody with these tools? And everybody's on mute, so you have to unmute yourself if you're talking. So a lot of wisdom was just said. I could feel it. I could feel it. So,
Beth, I think you're muted if you were sharing. I can't unmute you. I didn't sign as an administrator.
I found it.
I think
awesome. And you can also hit your space bar and toggle it between. It's kind of fun.
Oh.
So yeah, so I don't know if you heard that last comment. Basically, I was saying, you know, is there anything that comes to your mind in terms of how you would use these tools to answer any questions?
A lot.
Yeah.
One of the things is I have somebody wanting to do an addition, and I'm doing an addition to my home. And like you were saying, you can compare this, and you know, does it make sense to add another bedroom or two? And looking at the chart, this is great.
Yep. So it's easy. The good thing too is so I love efficiencies, and I can get sucked into this stuff and kind of get lost in the data, and I could, you know, be curious about a zillion things and spend an hour and a half like looking at pretty pictures that it doesn't really ultimately help me get anywhere. And so in order to resist the urge to do that, if you can, Trendgraphix has this as well, where you can basically go, you know, and you could say, all right, Nashville, what's the market like for Nashville? And you could, or Davidson County, and click on that, and then just print a report without doing anything, and it'll give you kind of a market snapshot that you could send out to all your clients if you wanted, or you could do it by zip code. Here, same thing, but this little fast stats link right here is awesome. And so you can look at fast stats, oops, and you can see you know, Nashville and most recent time period, and click view report. Well, it'll give you a nice little overview of what April looked like. And obviously we're in June now, so you're like, well, Zach, you missed a month. Where's May? May will come out in about 5 days, probably. They usually try to get through the first week of the next month before compiling and making sure the data is accurate. And that's both Trendgraphix and this tool. But year to date, you can see how it compared to year to date in 2019 So the, you know, the year to date, new listings are down, right? Pendings are up. Closings are about the same. So more pendings are up. That means closings are probably going to rise here in the next month or two. Days on market, a little bit up. Prices though, woo, look at that prices. This is all of Nashville, up almost 10% from January through April of 2020 versus last year. Makes sense to you?
Unbelievable.
So this is a helpful little tool especially if you feel overwhelmed by like how to select stuff and how to do stuff. You could use this. You can screenshot this, put it on your social media. Again, there are different people learn different ways, right? Some people like the numbers, some people like the pictures. So you got numbers over here, you got percentages, and then you got pictures. So it works both ways. There's other stuff too in this fast stats where you can look at. So this is local market updates or monthly indicators, right? So this is basically Greater Nashville Realtor stuff, or there's Williamson County. You know, you can click on Williamson County and click View Report, and you can see, all right, it gives a nice story synopsis, because some people learn like that, right? So you can read that, and somebody's written that, and it's interpreted this data and said, all right, here's our opinion. While the stock market recovered significantly in March, the effects of COVID-19 in the economy continued to build, yada, 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 right? And then it just, so you could copy and paste that in your you know, Instagram or Facebook, you know, below the picture. And then you do, you know, one of these pictures. Now this is a lot of stuff, right? So these are pretty in-depth, and they can be a little bit overwhelming, but it looks, you know, historical pending sales all the way for the last 12 years. Anybody know why they go up and down every time? If I said, is it, would you be more excited about selling a house in the spring or in the middle of the
time of year?
Time of year, right? So this is winter time, right? That's January. So almost, I mean, it's like clockwork. More pendings happen from January all the way till about June, and then they slow down. Same thing with new listings. Number of new listings. When's the best time to sell my house? Well, you're gonna have more competition the closer you get into the summer, and then less competition as you get down toward the end of the year. When do closings happen? Well, they kind of follow new listings, right? When new stuff comes in the market, people will buy it, and so same thing. So that's what those are. But there's a tremendous amount of data here, and I'm not going to get into all that. But I think what's nice is this little synopsis right here that you can get from that piece. The last thing is this annual report right here. And so you can look at an annual report. Now this is all of RealTrack. So this is like super big picture, right? But you can pull up and it'll show for 2019, which is starting to feel a little bit dated, right? But it's a nice thing to remember. In January of 2021, you could pull up one of these things for 2020 if you wanted to send out, you know, print this off and mail it out to all your clients, past clients or network, or email it, you could do that. So, and it just, again, kind of very big generalizations in terms of, you know, what the quick facts are. What's the median sales price? Wow, sales prices went up. They went up 5.5% a year. They went up 9%, 10% in 2016, almost 10% in 2017. This is big picture stuff, but it's helpful for people to know. And it saves you a ton of time from having to go manually search this stuff. You've got the report already put together right here. And I think some people might say, well, it's not, you know, it's branded. I see RealTrack up here. It's not branded for me. Well, if you want to hire a designer or ask, you know, Caitlin to put your stuff on here, she can do that. But I would caution you to make it a little bit less about you, because what this does is, whether it's branded to you or not, you can write a cover letter and you can mail it to your clients. And then if you follow up with a phone call, they won't remember whether this was branded to you or not. They remember that you're caring and reaching out and engaging with them. And that is the magic. So, so Teddy, you put on the agenda the difference between in-person, mailing, phone calls, and emailing. And this is a huge thing. So the whole, as great as it is to show data, we can't change it, right? It is what it is. So it helps us understand, it helps us tell that story, but it's in the past. We can't change it. So the whole, in my opinion, the whole entire point of using this data, unless it's with somebody you're working with right now, the whole point is to create an opportunity for an engagement. and a conversation and dialogue and a touch, whatever you want to call it, right? It's letting them know that, hey, I'm still in the real estate business. Hey, I'm a professional. Hey, I offer value, whether you read this thing or not. Hey, don't forget about me, right? As opposed just to like sending them a postcard that says, are you looking to buy or sell your house? Because if so, I'm the realtor for you, right? That's a solicitation. This is a value add. And so I would just caution you, don't overthink it. This does not have to be perfect. And that's why I like these reports, because you can send them out and probably 80% of the people you send them to will not read them. And that's okay. Because what it does, if you send it to them, it allows you to pick up the phone, make a phone call, and just say, hey, Susie Q, this is Beth Hooker. I sent you something the other day. I like to send all my clients, annual market reports. Just wanted to make sure you got that and just check in with you. How's everything going? Right?
How did you know Susie Q is my client?
Susie's awesome. She's told me good things about you. So, but
hey, Zach, thank you. I got to go for an inspection. But
this is awesome. Yeah, thank you.
So I think when I talk to agents, and you'll hear this in coaching stuff, it's like pick up the phone, call, dial for dollars, whatever it is. Most people have a fear of picking up the phones, a little fear or a lot of fear of picking up the phone and just randomly calling somebody because it feels like a solicitation. And if you are calling somebody and you're like, hey, how you doing? What are you calling about? Oh, I was just checking in. You want to buy or sell a house? You are soliciting them, right? So that's a hard phone call to make. But if you send them something of value and then you call to follow up, it's a way easier phone call to make. So again, there's 3 ways that you can send this data. One of them is you can email it. That rarely works. It just doesn't. It's not going to get opened. It's going to come across as a solicitation. It might end up in their spam folder. It's not really that valuable. It doesn't look like you took the time. Most people will assume it's some automated thing. It doesn't look like you took the time to do it. If instead you take that same thing and you print it out, and I wouldn't even fold it up. I would get a nice big brown or white, 8.5 by 11 or whatever size that 8.5 by 11s fit in envelope. I'd put them in there. I'd write a cover letter on it. And then you handwrite their address on it, put a few stamps on it, whatever it takes, and send it to them. You are going to get, I would think, if not 100%, then pretty darn close to 100% of the people are going to open that. Wouldn't you? You get a handwritten big envelope sent to your house, like, I'm either somebody's sending me some love or they're suing me. One of the two. But if it's handwritten, they're probably sending something of value. And then the third is just trying to schedule time to meet in person. And ultimately that's the best, but that can be, that will invoke some fear in a lot of people of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to try to bother these people and tell them to meet with me. So what I've found is the best way to create that dialogue, and oftentimes it leads to an in-person meeting, is to go ahead and send this, put it in the mail. You send it today, it arrives by Friday, Saturday. And then on Monday or Tuesday, you call and you say, hey, I sent you something. I just, not sure if you had a chance to look at it, but I wanted to follow up and one, just let you know that I do that as a service to my network, and also just see how everything's going. And you'll probably get in a conversation. And next thing you know, you're like, man, I miss hanging out. Like, what are you doing on Thursday? We should grab a beer. Or we should go get lunch, or we should do whatever it is. Or if you have any questions about that, I can do a Zoom call with you, right? Does that feel easier than just picking up the phone and calling somebody randomly to solicit them? So all of these are included tools. You don't pay for them. They're there, but they're not going to do it themselves. So I would just challenge each of you to do that. Go ahead, Beth.
How long has this been available?
So the InfoSparks thing has probably been available for maybe 5 or 6 months. It's not that it's
Where have I been?
You haven't been anywhere. It's pretty new. And I haven't dug into it. And I think I've talked about it a little bit at a sales meeting, but I'm still getting used to it. Again, you can watch that 5-minute video, but then just play with it. And
awesome.
You'll see it. But again, I love kind of geeking out and playing with all this stuff wherever it went. I guess back here. But when I found these fast stats, I was like, oh my gosh, that is great. It puts it all in there. Some of you have used RPR as well. That is a tool. I'm not going to get into that, but if you go to narrpr.com, it stands for Realtor Property Resource. NAR stands for National Association of Realtors. So narrpr.com. You can log in and create an account if you don't have one. And it's a similar thing where you can basically create market reports. The tricky part about RPR is it's sort of like a couple of these have a ton of data. RPR has a massive amount of data. It's kind of why I like this one. It's a one-pager. Local market update, April 2020. It's like, boom, done. One page, just the highlights. You're not trying to solve the world's problems with this. You're just providing a little bit of a market overview. And then what if you printed that off, put that one page in a bigger envelope, and then printed off this one for, if you're doing Davidson County, do Davidson County, and or Greater Nashville Realtors, and then copy and paste that, put it on a cover letter, and then bam, you're done. What else have you all done that you've had success with in terms of something like this, or heard of that maybe is a good that you could share with everybody else?
I haven't used a lot of stats, so I'm thankful to learn more about this. It's always I've sat through courses like this and got some education on it, and then I just find that while I appreciate them, the time it takes me to create them has become what I figure is more work or more time than it's worth. And so, but I appreciate when the stats that are provided to us, because those are easy to leverage for me in social media. But I think it's important, especially when you get into certain clients where they're really getting sticky with you about price. And so I think knowing your customer, if you're calling for, I know every listing when I do my weekly status calls, of when I'm going to have that price modification conversation, and having some of that data that's a little bit deeper can be helpful for that certain personality type. In my experience, the higher the price point, the more likely they're going to want statistical data.
Agreed. And it's also, I think, I know I feel this way, is that I can get, if I don't have the answer, I can get paralyzed with something, because I feel like people expect that, well, you should have the answer. And I always want to remind myself that I don't have to always have the answer, but I can use my brain and work to find the answer. And there may not be a black and white answer, but we can use information. And if we can shine some light on some of the confusion or lack of clarity, we can create some clarity and ultimately make a more informed and better decision together as a team. I love taking a team approach with my sellers and say, look, I've done this a lot. Here's what I think, but let's look at this stuff together. Tell me what you think. What do you see with this? Let's have a conversation about it.
I think it'd be cool to have one or two of our brokers and or other agents that maybe are starting in the business but really love this stuff to just market themselves as a resource. I love this like peer knowledge and even like side hustle, so that let's say somebody's really good at these stats, when they get paid at least 20, 30, 50 bucks an hour, somebody comes in and says, I'm taking a $2 million listing. Could you run me stats for blank, 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 blank? At least they're going to make 20, 30 bucks or $100, and it's going to help us put together a pitch. I think that might be a nice thing for some agents that may be intimidated by it. They don't necessarily want to learn it, but we have at least in our directory that these are a couple people that know Trendgraphix really well. These are people that know Transaction Desk. These are your dot loop people. Maybe we add that to our roster. That was just a talk out loud idea.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love it.
Well, I'm just going to add real quick, if you don't mind. And this is great, Zach. Thanks. This is like my third time listening to this. I learn something every time. First of all, this is great information. It's been really focused on sell side. But there's a whole other world of how this can be used effectively with your buyers. And maybe that's for another discussion. But the flip side of it's a great time to list your house is it's kind of a poopy time if you're really looking to find a house and you've got other challenges. So just to help set expectations, but also to give people a clear picture. So don't be scared of this. We're going in with knowledge. Second thing is, if you send stats to somebody or a graph or something, be sure you understand it, because if you send it and they ask you questions and you don't know how to explain it, then you're going to do damage to your relationship with them. And thirdly, not all of these things are for the same, for the same seller. The full report that you can get at the beginning of the year, maybe you send that out to your investor clients. Just download it, send it to them. It's your touch point with your investor clients, because they're going to look at it, they're going to read it. Whereas some people, some sellers you want to target because they only like, the visual stuff. We'll pick 10 that month and send them to those. And anyway, you can really tailor it. There's no one solution. There's so many, resources and tools. Pick one or two that you're good at and don't be overwhelmed by the rest of them. I'm really just saying that to myself because I'm overwhelmed by all the tools. So anyway, thank you.
I love that. And as far as buyers go, I think, I would say a buyer's number one fear, well, there are kind of four very traditional and classic fears that buyers have. One is paying too much, right? This is a great way to say, in addition to comps, these are the comps right now, but here, let's look at the last 3 years. Here's what things have been doing. They've been appreciating. So does that mean you're paying more now than you were before? Yeah. But they also haven't taken a big dip. And if you look at the last 12 years, there was a dip, but it wasn't a huge dip. And ultimately, it lets you kind of talk through what the difference would be from waiting to, some of them might say, well, I want to wait for the market to fall. Okay. So houses have been appreciating between 5 and 10% every year, but you're waiting 3 years for the market to fall 5%, even though it appreciated 10 or 15% in the time frame. Like, that doesn't make sense. And you're not getting a good interest rate. Like, that's not their real objection, right? So the other objections that buyers have are either paying too much, missing the right house, or missing a house, and then not getting their house, like losing in a multiple offer situation, and then buying a broken house. And so those you don't fix with this stuff. That's with, just kind of explaining them the process and, the fact that they're going to have an inspection and things like that. But that paying too much piece is helpful for buyers in terms of, looking at this. The market doesn't, aside from sort of annually, and that's just the amount of activity that happens, that's not pricing. Just like the stock market, home prices traditionally will go up either a little bit or a lot, depending on what that looks like. And you might have a dip of a year or 2 years, but that's pretty unlikely to throw things completely off for you, because you're buying it for the long term. You're buying it for at least 5 or 6 years, most likely at a minimum. And you're buying it to have a shelter over your head, to have a place that you can call home and have memories and be able to paint the walls the color you want and be able to plant the flowers that you want to plant. All of those things are what drive people to want to buy a home. It's not just this, like, I want to make sure that I don't lose $1 on my home.
Awesome.
So that's about all I got. I know I talked a little, and I'm gonna, unfortunately my computer has about 7% battery left, and I don't have a plug in my car. So I can, there's a recording of of that kind of focus first type Google Sheets software that I did. That's more for running comps, and I think I did a Zoom call on that a few weeks ago. But so I'll see if I can find that and send that out when I get to a stopping point, and then that way, if you want to learn more info on that, you can watch it.
We lost our picture of you, Zach. It kind of looked like you were sitting in your Learjet.
Here we go. Learjet.
There he is.
Shadows. Right?
You're in his Learjet. See that? There's the
like
window.
a G6 with a car seat belt.
That's right. That's right. I did take my seatbelt off.
Thank you so much. Nice to see
thank
you
you.
all.
Yeah, well, thank you all very much, and enjoy. And I'm going to get back on the road, and then if y'all have any questions, let me know, and I can respond to you tomorrow.
Great.
Safe
Cool.
travels, Zach. We appreciate you so much. From here forth, he'll be known as Stats Goodyear, everybody. Put your hands together.
Work.
Yay!
Practice,
This is awesome. I'm going to go play with it right now.
You won't break it. So, all right.
Okay.
So remember, to get into Trendgraphix, the super shortcut is zachgoodyear.net. ZACH, and then my last name, Goodyear.net. and that'll take you in there if you don't want to go onto the VRES market and get it that way. All right, y'all have a good one.
All right, take care. Safe travels.
See ya.